From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I am Estefania Bravo. This is From the South. Colombia's Attorney General's office has finally released his FARC leader Jesus Santrich. This comes a day after Colombia's Supreme Court ordered that he be freed and announced they would be taking over the investigation of his case. According to the court, Santrich has immunity thanks to his position as a representative in the country's lower house of Congress. Earlier this month, Santrich was released from prison only to be arrested minutes later due to the alleged discovery of new evidence linking him to drug trafficking in the U.S.
I have a complete commitment with the system of the truth, justice, reparation, and non-repetition, and today I want to ratify it. I have a commitment with the special jurisdiction for peace and with the Supreme Court to help to clarify any doubts that can exist related to my behavior. I will always have hope that we can achieve the transformation we wanted with the peace agreements to improve not only the rule of law, but also the everyday life of the Colombian citizens.
And following Santrich's release, Senator Pablo Catatumbo has said that the FARC party hopes the government goes back to the path established in the peace agreements. He has also celebrated the decision of the Supreme Court, saying that the court has shown that the rule of law must be respected.
We are completely sure that peace will win in this country. We hope that the government returns to the path of fulfilling the peace agreements as they were signed. We are glad that three courts, the three main courts of Colombia, ratified that the rule of law has to be respected.
Honduran police have heavily repressed mass mobilizations by citizens who are opposing the privatization of healthcare and education. Protesters have been blocking roads all across the country, including some of the main highways, as police continue to fire tear gas at them. 1,000 protesters came out in Tegucigalpa, with some even forcing the closure of the country's main airport and the cancellation of all flights. The work stoppage has also crippled hospitals operations and shut down schools. Workers fear that the reforms will lead to huge job losses and are demanding that the government stop these policies. Over the past week of initial protests, all regions of the country saw roadblocks, marches, and university occupations. And Peruvian police have also fired tear gas on demonstrators who are protesting against highway tolls. According to local sources, 30 people were arrested while marching along the Pan American Highway. They were protesting against the privatization of roads, saying that some of the companies who received these contracts are highly corrupt. Our correspondent in Lima, Jaime Herrera, has more.
We are witnessing heavy repression by the Peruvian police against demonstrators. As you can see, police are riding motorbikes and horses while firing tear gas against protesters. Demonstrators are protesting in the other side of the road, as you can see. They are marching against the implementation of highway tolls because they say these charges are abusive and are the result of corruption between the government and the companies which have been tasked with managing roads. But it appears this repression will continue here in the Pan American Highway to the north of Lima.
We thank Jaime Herrera for that report. Students and teachers across Brazil have begun a day of mass protests against cuts and funding for education. Demonstrations are ongoing in 150 cities around the country, most of them in the evening. The government of President Jair Bolsonaro is hoping Congress will pass the cuts of 30% by June 10th.
The students are out on the streets today because we are not troublemakers. We are not stupid. All we want is quality education.
Our correspondent in Sao Paulo, Brian Muir, is on the scene.
I'm standing on Largo do Batata Square in downtown Sao Paulo, where shortly a massive demonstration is about to kick off of students and teachers against far-right-wing President Jair Bolsonaro's deep austerity cuts that he's proposing to the public education system. Now, this marks day 2 of a series of protests. Day one was May 15th, when over 2 million people came out to the streets in hundreds of cities across Brazil. And the way things are going today, it looks like it might be even larger. The protests started early in smaller and medium-sized cities across the country, with some towns that only have 100 or 200,000 people in them, showing 30 or 40,000 people on the streets protesting against Bolsonaro. Now, there have been attempts to fragment or change the meaning of the protests or hijack the protests, but the demands are still very clear. To halt all austerity cuts to public education, to halt the austerity cuts to the pension system, and to free former President Lula.
We thank Brian for that report. Protests have been taking place in Britain in support of Julian Assange after the WikiLeaks founder was taken into medical care. Supporters gathered outside the Westminster Magistrate Court in London to demand better care for Assange, who is in detention and awaiting a decision on his extradition to the United States. He was rushed to the medical area of Belmarsh Prison late on Wednesday. An Ecuadorian judge denied the bail request by the legal defense of the Swedish developer Ola Bini, who has been accused of attacking computer systems in Ecuador. His defense team has rejected this decision. From Quito, the details with Denise Herrera.
An Ecuadorian judge turned down Ola Bini's bail request, saying bail cannot be set since the Attorney General's office failed to state an amount for the alleged damage he caused. The Ecuadorian government has accused Bini of plotting to attack computer systems in the country. He has been detained since April 11 without any concrete charges and is currently serving a 90-day pre-trial detention.
The Attorney General's office has failed to state the amount of the alleged damage. That means that since the Attorney General's office has not done their job in identifying what systems he has attacked and who has been affected, since the Attorney General's office has not done their job, Ola Bini is the victim. He has not been granted bail for what the Attorney General's office has failed to do.
During the bail hearing, the Attorney General's office denied the bail request. One of their arguments was that Ola Bini has not collaborated with the justice system. On the other hand, Ola Bini wrote several letters from jail and sent them to the public. One of them was addressed to President Lenin Moreno. He asked him to explain what crime he committed.
The judge said that since he's not registered in Ecuador's social security system, meaning he's not an employee, his economic activity can't be justified. That means that we should all be someone's employee. If someone does not want to work in a company or for someone, that person cannot be granted bail. This is something we can never understand as lawyers.
Bini's defense team state that Ola will be able to prove his innocence. They are expecting a final report from international organizations that have shown their solidarity and concern about his legal situation.
There are other legal instances we can go to. Let's not forget the report by the UN's Arbitrary Detention Group, or the habeas corpus and the hearing of alternative measures.
Ola Bini has been accused of attacking the integrity of Ecuador's computer system. Up until now, the Attorney General's office has not been able to prove what and how the system were attacked. The decision taken by the Ecuadorian authorities has been criticized by social organizations that defend free software development nationally and internationally. Denise Herrera, Telesur, Ecuador.
Authorities in Argentina have arrested a well-known doctor and several others connected to a pedophile ring operating out of a pediatric hospital. The police seized hundreds of photos and videos, which are part of an international network of child pornography. According to authorities, the investigation involved extensive research of IP addresses that exchanged the material using deep web. Around 50,000 people were evacuated from the Paraguayan capital over the past few days due to floods and heavy rains. The majority of the affected live in the poorest areas of Asunción. However, some of the families decided to stay in their homes, refusing to leave flooded residences. The heavy rains started in mid-April and it is expected to continue until June. Venezuela has taken to the United Nations to demand that the organization intervene to recover stolen state assets. Part of the U.S. sanctions have taken millions from the Venezuelans, which were in banks around the world.
We are at the UN in Vienna, at the Anti-Corruption and Asset Recovery Convention, and we have condemned in this international forum the way that some countries like the United States steal our wealth in a corrupt act. We have denounced the theft of billions of dollars in banks and the company Citgo to allow private individuals to take advantage of it. This is a new form of corruption, unknown before in the world. So we want, through the UN, to recover our country's assets, which belong to all Venezuelans. They don't belong to the government. They belong to all the Venezuelan people. We are defending our nation, Venezuela. We have to defend it anywhere, and that's what we are doing here.
This week has seen further progress in talks between the Venezuelan government and the opposition in Norway, and that is something most people in Venezuela seem to support.
Talking among Venezuelans is a habit people here don't want to lose, nor do they want to see violence used as a means of achieving political ends, unlike some sectors of the Venezuelan opposition.
I call on the responsible sectors of the opposition. If they have responsible leaders, let them sit down and talk to the government. Discuss what kind of country we want. This is a participatory democracy, where Article 5 of the Constitution says it's the people who are supreme.
Anywhere can be a good place to exchange opinions. Here they recognize President Maduro's desire to ensure peace.
We have lost count of the number of times that President Maduro has offered the other side, the Venezuelan opposition, the chance to sit down and talk, to solve the problems through dialogue. Democracy has always been the way this Bolivarian revolution has addressed these problems, never with weapons. That is what Hugo Chavez left as his legacy.
The government has condemned the attempts to promote a coup here in Venezuela, as in other countries.
We have seen the belligerent stance of the United States, which wants to control our resources. That must be condemned. We continue to call for peace and to demand a dialogue. But there are some in the US and Europe who just want to get their hands on our oil.
Once again, the Venezuelan government is banking on talks, this time in Norway, where progress has been made to open channels with different political forces. But it continues on alert against the threats and financial blockade imposed by the Trump administration against the Venezuelan people.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. St. Vincent and the Grenadines, one Caribbean airline, is eyeing routes in Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves says the local courier is interested in flying from the Caribbean to countries like Ghana, Nigeria, and Indonesia. He added arrangements have been made and contracts lined up, but regulatory requirements are being finalized with the Eastern Caribbean Civil Aviation Authority. The news comes 1 week after a Boeing 747 acquired by local investors arrived in St. Vincent for the launch of non-stop flights between the island and Dubai. Trinidad and Tobago is commemorating the 102nd anniversary of the first arrival of Indian indentured laborers to the island. It's the first country to start the Indian Arrival Day holiday. The celebration is part of the country's rich multicultural heritage. On February 16, 1845, a ship called the Fatel Rasak, carrying the first Indian immigrant, departed India for Trinidad. They embarked on the journey to work as indentured laborers in the then British colony, where slavery had just been abolished. A total of 143,000 Indian migrants forged a new path in Trinidad. They toiled and suffered in the cane and cocoa fields, but prevailed. Indian immigrants brought a whole new culture and way of life while contributing significantly to national development. Authorities in Ethiopia say over 1 million internally displaced citizens who fled due to the recent ethnic clashes have returned to their homes. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed says the military has been involved in securing the safe passage of those displaced back to their original homes. The government has also provided building materials to repair damaged houses. Abiy has introduced numerous political reforms, some of which have led to a decline in ethnic violence. Hundreds of women have marched towards Sudan's military headquarters, calling on the ruling generals to hand over power to a civilian-led government. The women protesters are demanding a civil and fair government that respects their rights. This comes after calls from protest leaders for a mass march to pressure the military council to step down. Bearing flags and banners, the women joined other protesters who have staged a week-long sit-in outside the army complex.
We want a civilian government that will guarantee our rights as women and that will guarantee a decent living for us, in a state of citizenship with rights and duties.
And although the two-day national strike has ended in Sudan, thousands of protesting workers still remain on the streets. Demonstrators gathered in the capital city, Khartoum, have intensified their calls for the ruling military to hand over power to a civilian-led authority. The Alliance for Freedom and Change protest movement has hailed the two-day strike a success. In the Dominican Republic of Congo, about 26 fighters believed to be linked to the Islamic State have been killed by Congolese forces. An army spokesman says Congolese soldiers returned fire after the armed group shot at them. The clash between the army and the fighters from the Allied Democratic Forces took place in an Ebola zone near the city of Benin. It's an area where more than a dozen militia and armed gangs operate.
I have seen the bodies of the real ADF rebels. They are not our brothers. We have seen them with our own eyes. So we are happy. Because we have lost our mothers, children, and also the fact that my younger brother was slaughtered. And up until now, we still have no idea where his body is, or was buried.
And still in the DRC, crowds are still awaiting the arrival of the body of Felix Tshisekedi, the president's late father, 2 years after he died in Belgium. Opposition leader Etienne Tshisekedi died in Brussels in 2017 at the age of 84. But his body remained there due to political tensions with former President Joseph Kabila. According to the president's brother, once the body arrives at the airport, it will be taken to the Martyrs Stadium in Kinshasa for mourning. Zimbabwe's largest hydroelectric power plant has warned of total blackouts if water levels at the Kariba Dam continue to fail. Citizens are already daily 10-hour-long power outages, largely as a result of a devastating drought. The power company is reportedly owed over $200 million by the government and individual customers. Authorities say that if some of this money is repaid, electricity imports from South Africa could resume. In Mozambique, women represent the majority of the population, and they face a number of challenges in their struggle for a more equal society. That fight continues following the catastrophic consequences of Cyclone Idai. Andre Vieira tells us more in the third part of our series, Mozambique, The People Rebuilt.
Here, in the Hamamba community in Sofala, ceremonies are led by 71-year-old Selina Mayanga, the oldest woman in the area. It's a tradition that values the wisdom of women, but that isn't always the case. Of the almost 30 million people living in Mozambique, more than 52% are women. However, 71% of families are led by men. That's according to research entitled Women and Men in Mozambique, published by the government in 2017.
There are provinces where women are significantly exploited, and others where women are treated better. Here, women are the foundation of the household. They do everything. The men are only there to think of themselves at the head of the family, giving orders, while men comply.
In the countryside, the division of labor between women and men is even more visible. Women are responsible for domestic activities, like transporting water and looking after children. They also work in agriculture. The men dedicate themselves to hunting and agriculture. Now, they have to include work relative to reconstructing their lives after Cyclone Idai, which hit the region in March.
I think it's okay, but it's not enough just to work at home. We should also study and have employment. Here we study, but finding employment is hard.
Dedication to family life starts early for these women. Among them are those between the ages of 15 and 19 years old who get married. 87% are girls and 12% are boys. In urban areas, it's more common to see women with roles that aren't limited to domestic work. However, across the country, women are more affected by unemployment. Of the economically active population, unemployment affects 32% of women and 23% of men.
Right now, Mozambican women can do what men do. Before, we will say that women were something else, but today, no. Today, Mozambican women play a much more important role.
Another task for society is to overcome gender-based violence. In 2017, 80% of violent acts against adults were against women. It's a challenge for the entire country to build a Mozambique that's more equal for everyone.
A woman from Mozambique is able to play every role. A mother, a woman. There's no explanation. They are everything.
The women from the land of Josina Machel, the Mozambican guerrilla fighter who fought for the country's independence alongside Zamora Machel, promised to continue the struggle for their rights.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Term as India's Prime Minister following his overwhelming election victory. He took the oath of office along with his cabinet ministers. More than 8,000 guests, including heads of several neighboring countries and Bollywood stars, attended the ceremony in Delhi. Ahead of his inauguration, Modi visited the memorials of Mahatma Gandhi and Atal Bihari Vajpayee, where he paid respects to the late leaders. The UK's opposition Labour Party has warned about the dangers posed by Theresa May's resignation in relation to the Brexit. Opposition leader Jeremy Corbyn has said his party was going to fight a no-deal exit because of its negative prospects. Corbyn described May's withdrawal and most of the Conservatives' leadership as disorderly and dangerous. The outgoing British Prime Minister emotionally announced her resignation last week after repeatedly failing to get her Brexit plan through Parliament.
I think there is a real danger of that with the Prime Minister's announced resignation and departure from office and the agenda of most of the candidates for the Tory party leadership. We will do absolutely everything we can in Parliament to prevent a no-deal exit from the EU, because it is a very dangerous prospect, because it would lead to a loss of jobs, a loss of investment and a loss of trade.
Prompted by a potent opening spell from Jofra Archer, England began their Cricket World Cup campaign with a comfortable 104 run against South Africa. Archer, playing only his fourth one-day international, took 327 and hit Hashim Amla on the helmet to force him to temporarily leave the field. But not to be outdone, England skippers Ian Morgan and Ben Stokes picked up the pace to bring their side back into the contest. And it was a huge wicket for England as Liam Plunkett sent back Quinton de Nock for 68. Cuba continues developing traditional forms of medicine which are considered to be an effective alternative to be used by the health professionals. One particular pharmacy is in the island at the forefront of this specialty. Let's take a look.
University professor Antonio Castro is a customer of Flora, my grandmother's pharmacy, a very particular pharmacy specializing in natural and traditional medicine. He assures us that these products are very beneficial for people's health.
I usually buy products for my digestion. In this case, we also use many other natural products sold here. They help with different types of ailments.
Flora, my grandmother's pharmacy, is a developing project located in Punta Brava, about 25 kilometers to the west of Havana. Here, the traditional way of preparing herbs and infusions are preserved, but scientific certifications are also carried out to avoid mistakes in the use and the concentration of products.
One package is enough to prepare a liter of tea or natural infusion. It is good to cure a cold. It contains oregano, rosemary, flor de mahagua, and copal, which is used as a expectorant.
This pharmacy produces an array of products to control hypertension, diabetes, inflammatory, circulatory, and respiratory issues, as well as herbs for cooking.
These products have active ingredients and often have a pleasant taste. Patients can consume the medicine several times a day without causing and discomfort. So we do a great tasting mix for the patient.
This project is led by Dr. Rodolfo Arincibia. For him, natural and traditional medicine is not an alternative. It is a primary option among a myriad of products to treat health issues.
We have to bring this back as a main option. A doctor needs to have the choice between chemical and natural products for patients with acute or chronic health problems, or for older patients and children, or for cases where chemicals may bring further issues.
Cuba has a long history of developing natural and traditional medicine. According to reports from the Ministry of Health, in 2018, the island achieved the best result in its history within its field by producing 78 million bottles, all of natural medicine.
And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesperenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.
The Pakistani journalist Tariq